It's the track.
Okay, recording the podcast Saturday, 16th of May. I'm back in the Great Mountain State. Shane Rohde holding down Fort Global Headquarters in Auckland, New Zealand. Shane-o, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. It was a long day on the links yesterday after a couple of months absence, so I'll be playing a support role today. I'm coming off the bench.
Well, speaking of absences, we were absent last week, had a few things to deal with. Some of the fans weren't happy, but you know, we're just keeping everybody on their toes. The tens and tens of fans of the Track Stitch podcast. Be in for a good one today. So Shane-o, kicking things off, I think a lot's happened in the last 24 hours actually, including this Shanghai Diamond League, first Diamond League of the season. We're probably going to be about the 5th or 6th mass media outlet to do a recap on that one, but that's okay. I think what we should do is go back maybe a week. And this was some action we could have talked about last week, but didn't. At the Oregon Twilight, Bond-villain Simeon Birnbaums runs 144. Fantastic performance there. We'll talk about him in a second, but just wanted to shout out because when I went and watched the race, I was pleasantly surprised to see that the man who led for all but the final 80 metres of this one was New Zealander James Harding. He runs 145.66, which by my mathematics puts him 7th on the all-time list behind Preston, Snell, Walker, Sean Farrell, Nick Willis and Brad Mathis. And also, I don't know if you saw this result, he ran 3:39.85 3 weeks earlier at the other Oregon Relays meet. And in this one, 50.8 for the first lap, so he was very aggressive. 26.6, so he was 117.4. I think that makes it 600 meters. So he struggled a bit in the final 200. But this is really great news for James Harding because, of course, he was a big talent over here in New Zealand a couple of years ago. I think he actually took my under 18 or under 17 records or something like that, destroyed them. And then he went to the US colleges. He had a few issues, I think, with injury. Seemed like he dropped off the map, but now back with a vengeance. How good's that?
Yeah, it's superb.
Yeah, 145.66. And he's really trending up. I'm pretty sure that's going to put him in the field for NCAA championships. So shout out to James Harding for that performance and really gutsy to take it on at the start of the race and just charge it. And yeah, awesome stuff. Hey, but back to our buddy Simeon Birnbaums. Deo. So 3:31 now, collegiate record, doing it all by himself out there in Hayward Field. And then this one here too, he just dropped the hammer on those guys in the final 100 meters, put about a second on them. How good is this guy? And I think it's time to ask a question. You getting Cole Hocker vibes from SB?
In terms of his potential level, yes, but he's a very different type of athlete in terms of he doesn't have that punchy last 80 meters of a Cole Hocker. He's more languid in his action and he's got that more long speed, even though he's got over 800. Think sort of Steve Cram, even though he doesn't have the flowing stride. He's a big lanky dude. He goes up the clock well. I think they've trained him well because he was a high school standout and he's very capable over the longer distances. He had a few issues transitioning to the pros, which is not uncommon, but the way he's able to, his range is pretty extraordinary. And the way they've managed him, it seems, his aerobic profile, so he can dip down into the 800 like that. It's coming from a sort of speed strength rather than an outright speed perspective. So I think, yeah, he's a phenomenal talent.
Do you know who he reminds me of in terms of kind of performance portfolio and also haircut? It's Niels Laros, the Flying Dutchman. Doesn't he remind you a little bit of...
Shuffles a bit like Laros. Yeah. It might be the new thing, the shuffling.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's an interesting one because I have to admit, when I watched that race with those guys, I did think it was, you know, if you'd masked off the upper bodies, you would have thought it was a crew of Neil Schumans out there running this 800 meters. Very, very low knee lift. I don't know if it's, like you said, if it's something that they're actually training out there at the University of Oregon, but whatever it's doing, it's working. So, you know, man, things really trending up for New Zealand 800 meter running at the moment. Super exciting. Obviously, James Preston's still around, running incredibly well. James Harding now, really, his potential is, I guess, coming to fruition as he's, you know, maturing through the collegiate ranks. And then, of course, we've got the son of the great Nick Cowan, 400 meter runner, Thomas Cowan, also a sub 147 performer. So, all
and
looking
Sam Ruth as well.
God. And of course, Sam Ruth. How can we forget about Sam Ruth? Also a sub 146 guy. So things looking up for New Zealand 2-lap running as well as the mauling. Shano, moving forward overnight, the Shanghai Diamond League, the first Diamond League of the season, is done. Like I said, we're probably going to be about fourth or fifth media outlet to touch on this one. But Shano, we talked about this because I had some inside information that potentially this was going to happen. The big race of the meet, I think, was always going to be, at least for us Antipodeans down under, was always going to be this Australian trials rematch in the women's 1500 meters. In case you didn't know or have been sort of buried in the sand, big controversy in the Australian Nationals over 1500 meters. Claudia Hollingsworth did her best Cole Hocker impersonation, got herself stuck on the inside with about 80 to go, clearly the best athlete in the field. She did the old pull out of the parallel park move, took out Jess Hull, media darling, golden girl of Australian track and field. She hit the deck. Big controversy after this one. She gets disqualified the next day. She's back in. But of course, 4 doesn't go into 3, Shano, for the Commonwealth Games. So there was a little bit of a sort of an undertone or rumors that this race in Shanghai was going to be set up. And Shano, do you know what happened?
Well, it's a little bit, Jason, I think this is a very big picture and abstract, but it's a little bit like the same way that that humans have stuffed up religion, in the sense that the doctrine is good, but the application is poor. And look, track and field at its essence, you got the fight or flight, right? And it's obviously the flight aspect of the old fight or flight. And track and field is supposed to be, if you read John Parker's, what was it called? Once a Runner. Robbie Johnson gave that to me. It's supposed to be the purest, or one of the two purest sports out there. So you leave it to the athletes to see who breaks the tape first. And officiating should be limited to a criteria of should someone be disqualified or not. And in the case of that race, she should have been disqualified. It's pretty straightforward. And what I think the flow and effect of it is she kind of, as we all do on an individual level, wanted to win. So she got reinstated and she won. So on the face of it, she's ostensibly happy, right? But then what happens is some weird sort of guilt, knowing in her heart of hearts, she did cause a big cock up. She took down the darling of Australian track and field. There was imagine that as how old is she? 19, 20-year-old. You're taking down the Olympic silver medalist. There's just sort of, big fiasco around it all, media. You're in the news for the wrong reasons. Next day, you get beaten in the 800. This is a few weeks after beating Georgia Hunter-Bell, the world champ silver medalist in the 800. You lose to Abby Caldwell, who, no disrespect to Abby Caldwell, is a great athlete, but Claudia Hollingsworth is supposed to be the second coming, so to speak. So all in all, that's bad enough. But then you interfere further and you create as you said it, Jason, an unofficial selection race. You line them all up in Shanghai. You're going to tell us what happened, Jason. But what a horrible backdrop for a woman who was 2 weeks earlier beating the world champion, Georgia Hunter-Bell, to getting, let's be honest, kind of maligned and castigated in the media, and all of a sudden her confidence is just hit like a stock price that was going and going, like an AI stock, Jason, like an Intel stock. That's just literally nosedived into the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, it's a bit of a crazy situation, and let's do a bit of an analysis here and figure out what on earth is going on. So either way, after the Australian Nationals, Claudia Hollingsworth was, I guess officially, unofficially, I'm not even sure how this works. I'm not totally keyed in with Australian selection policies for their track and field teams, but Claudia Hollingsworth wins the national title. She's obviously got the standard, as all of the athletes do. Sarah Billings was in second place and Abby Caldwell third. At this point, Jess Hull is out. She didn't finish the race. She, even if Claudia Hollingsworth gets reinstated, which she does, she didn't finish the race. This is what happened last night in Shanghai, Shano. Berka Halom wins the race 3:55.56. Sige Deguma, her countrywoman, fellow Ethiopian, 3:55.71. Abby Caldwell now in third. So Abby Caldwell in this unofficial selection race rerun of the national championships, she gets third, 3:56.12. That makes her the second fastest Australian of all time. Then you go all the way down to sixth. Jessica Hull runs 3:57.91. A little bit off what Jessica Hull is capable of and what she's been running the last couple of years. But now she's got second in this unofficial rerun of the trials. And Sarah Billings comes in eighth, one place ahead of Claudia Hollingsworth. Right, so based on the Shanghai selection race, the field is now Caldwell, Hull, Billings with Hollingsworth on the outer, but we know she's not on the outer because they reinstated her at the Aussie Nationals. And obviously they didn't do that unless they didn't want her to be in Glasgow. So this has just become an absolute cluster F, Shano. And it's just so typical of Athletics Australia's selection policies. We had the same drama last year, if you remember, in the men's 1500. Ollie Hoare, I believe, got second at Nationals behind Cam Myers, and then they stiffed him at the last minute. But this is absolute comedy here, because who are we going to leave out? Now, on the surface, you'd say, hey, maybe we leave out Sarah Billings, right? Because she's the slowest of these athletes. She's the least decorated. She's got a spot in the 800. She finished eighth in this race, just ahead of Hollingsworth. But how can you leave out Sarah Billings when she finished second at the Nationals and third out of the four Australian athletes in this trial race? You can't leave out Abby Caldwell. She also finished in the top three at the Nationals, and she just won this unofficial race in the second fastest Australian time ever. If you're confused, Shano, then I'm confused, because I just don't know what's going to happen. And all I'd say is get your popcorn ready for this one, because it is destined to be just yet another classic piece of comedy coming from across the ditch.
I mean, I don't know what's going to happen because it's a circus, but I know what I'd do. I'd leave out Claudia Hollingsworth.
Wow, really?
And I'll tell you why. Yeah, 100%. I'll tell you why. She's got to learn that if you do something like that in a race like that, there's a consequence. She caused it. I don't care what anyone on Let's Run, the Let's Run guys says. She was there was no space there. She had to disrupt everybody. She took Hull down. She did take Hull down. It wasn't Jessica Hull's fault. She impeded the others, and she's caused this whole thing, and not through any malignant or,
of course, not
malevolent intention. It's human. She's a young athlete. She made a mistake. She doesn't go, and then I tell you what, there's precedent for that being a good thing in the long run. I remember reading Schteve Vet's book when I was an aspiring young buck, and he got left out of the 74. Was it 74 comms or 75 European? One of the majors just before the Olympics in 76. He got left out when he was an 800-meter runner by a guy who was more experienced but didn't have the chops or the potential of a vet. And I remember reading this passage in the book. He said he realized that he needed to take things out of the selectors' hands with humans involved, people involved, and he resolved that he was never going to get left off a team again. And look what happened to Stephen Vet's career. She's very young. So you combine those two factors, because they obviously wanted her for experience, because she's incredible. I think yes,
you've been very glowing of her.
Rap on her for a long time. So she moves beautifully. Went and watched her run, and she's awesome. So so long-term potential, but also just doing what's right. Like, how do you leave, like you said, you can't leave Jessica Hull out. I mean, you say maybe she's not at the level she was, possibly, but she's the Olympic silver medalist. She is
world bronze medalist.
World bronze. She's run 3:50. She, and how do we know she wouldn't have held on for at least second or third even if Caldwell came flying past her too? Okay, so that's not fair.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
she's got second in this section. So Abby Caldwell beat Hollingsworth the next day in the 800. How do you leave her off? She's just run 356.1. She's got great. She's perfectly suited to a championship because she's got really nice form. And Sarah Billings. I mean, how do you leave her off? So at the end of the day, if you put all that together, I mean, it has got to be Claudia Hollingsworth. That might be unpalatable to the powers that be over there, and I'm sure they'll make some sort of cock up of how they look at it. And athletics administrators are notorious for not making decisions on a principle basis. No pun intended here because it's the Ockers, but it's a kangaroo court. There's no proper justice administered.
Totally. But in Shano, here's the thing. I think I actually agree with you because I've been pondering this all morning, trying to figure out the permutations and the calculations. I've been plugging things into the quadratic equation and polynomial third degree calculus equations. I can't figure out who you would leave off to. And every time.
Sorry, but the clincher, Jason, is sorry, because you just told me this just before we came on air. So Claudia Hollingsworth, she finished out of, if this was a selection race, she finished off the team anyway. But yeah, well then even more case to say then you have to leave her off because you basically if she'd pumped everyone in this race, you'd go, well, okay, But even more reason to say then, well, you didn't finish within the top 3 in the selection race.
I know, but herein lies the issue, and like I said, the cluster F is that she won. She is in the books as the Australian national champion, whether rightly or wrongly. And this was the mistake they made. If these idiots over there had just stuck to their guns and kept her disqualified, we wouldn't even have this issue. But the problem is, and you and I both agree, that it was written in their policy. I did check this out on the Athletics Australia website. I managed to find their selection policy. It's very similar to Athletics New Zealand. Obviously, we don't have the same volume of athletes that have run the times. But the Australian Championships, it's not the same as like the US trials, where it is completely cutthroat and you have to finish inside the top 3 and have the standard to go. They use all this sort of ambiguous wording like it's got the heaviest weighting, it's kind of the most important, but it's not the only determining factor, which just leaves everything up for interpretation. The problem is that she is the national champion because they reinstated her. And she has run the standard and she won the nationals. And I just don't know how they're going to keep her off.
It's an artifice. Are the Poms the 2019 ODI World Cup cricket champions?
Absolutely not. No, they are. Unfortunately, they are. But they are, though, right?
They're not really. And look, like, it's an artifice. Claudia Hollingsworth won that race because she impeded the whole race.
Yeah.
Well,
yes, but at the same time, we do agree that she was the best runner in the field on that day, right?
Yeah. Okay, but if she should have been disqualified, then she wasn't the Australian champion.
She wasn't overnight. We know that. Then she was the next day. Which
on a first gut reading, she wasn't the Australian champion. And then you go from the perspective of the selectors. You go, okay, we're gonna reinstate her, but we don't feel good about that,
right?
Because we kind of know where it's called teleological reasoning. It's when you try and justify the process by the end result you want. So you basically say, okay, we want her in the team, so we're going to make her the champ, but other guys don't. But fear not, we've got a solution. You're going to run off again because they probably thought she'd win or be top 3.
Right. Yes.
No, she isn't. So it's an artifice in the first place to say that we're going to come in and reinstate her on an unprincipled basis. And then, but don't worry, guys, we're going to go and you guys can all go and peddle your wares overseas and we'll see who's good in an overseas race. She didn't make the team based off that. So where does it end? At what point do you go, let's stop tinkering? Well, the answer is probably not. But it's yeah.
I know that's what makes us such an absolute mess and why it's going to be so awful. Because as well, I think what we're also missing here is that these athletes, they want to run. They want to be selected for these teams. We don't know the implications that being on a team has for their footwear contracts, for funding from the national bodies. So, like, yeah, I mean, they just want to run. I mean, Sarah Billings, she's got a spot on the 800 team, but she wants to run the 1500. If she didn't want to run the 1500, she wouldn't have been doing it. Like, they all want to be out there. And at the end of the day, now you've got four athletes who all have a case to some degree, some stronger than the others. And I agree with you on that, Shane, but they all have a case based on the selection criteria. And there's only 3 spots. And this was all caused, once again, because Australian selectors can't get out of their own way.
They don't have it. They don't all have a case. Claudia Hollingsworth stuffed the race up. And if you go and watch the body language, the gut feel is usually the right feel. You watch her body language in the interview, you watch her interacting with Hal, you watch the way she kind of almost from an outer body perspective defiantly said empty platitudes about what you're supposed to say as the champion. And you know that she feels bad about it because you can see she's a nice young lady. So to me, it's cut and dry. And then on top of that, to go and race off in Shanghai just to show us who is the best. And she doesn't make the top 4. And I'm a massive Claudia Hollingsworth fan. I think she's incredible. So it's not her fault. Like, it's not, okay, she stuffed up. We all make mistakes in life. But then everyone's tried to, like, manipulate this. And they've got a worse problem than they would have if they just said at the beginning, you're DQ'd.
Shano, I agree with that. But I'm going to tell you this. Claudia Hollingsworth will be on that team in the 1500 meters for Glasgow. They will select her. I've got no idea how they're going to figure out these other 3, but I can guarantee you she's going to be on that team. They wouldn't have reinstated her if they didn't want her there. And also, by the way, a little tidbit, I'm pretty sure I read today on the intraweb that she's been officially selected for that team already based on the fact that she won/didn't win, however you want to interpret it, the Australian National Championships. Either way, as you could probably tell by that intense back and forward, this is a total mess, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. Yet again, Australia, I mean, they do so much better than us Kiwis across the ditch in many ways, but not always, Shano.
You know what they should do?
What?
They should get Craig Bellamy and Wayne Bennett to come in and take over Australian athletics. Those two guys wouldn't put up with any of this horse shit. They'd just come in and they'd go, nah, this is what's happening.
Well, sometimes they could bring in the Channel 9 commentary team, Ray Warren, Phil Gould, and Peter Sturlo.
Bellamy would sort them out. I mean, it's an interesting, I don't want to bore people with like legal theory, but it's an interesting concept, when democracy is applied to quasi-judicial bodies like, say, sports administration, because it doesn't have even for, say, in the civil courts, it has its blind spots, but when it's applied in a kind of quasi or semi-judicial way, it's even worse than sometimes just having an autocracy where someone or a panel of actually really clever people just make decisions. And what they've got is a kind of dual model where on the ostensibly it is democratic, but then you've got people in the background pulling all sorts of strings who have power. And because the way the world works is power is very much matters, you've got this outward need to appease, say, the athletes and the public with how the process works. But what's really happening is people are just going, they're the best athletes, they're going. So the whole thing's a total balls up. Decide what you are, either make it a proper process where you follow all the rules to a T, or you just go, you know what, we're just going to pick who we think are the best people. And some people might not like that because that's effectively what's happening here, but they're trying to shoehorn some logic outwardly to say, oh, that's why, but that's what's happening here.
Anyway, moving forward, some other events were on other than the women's 1,500 meters. Faith Kipyegon made her season debut. Deo won the 5K in about 14:20, a little bit off her former world record of 14:05. But good to see Kipyegon out there. It looks like she's going to be a force once again in the Diamond League. No surprise there. We can talk about what we're looking forward to in the Diamond League as a whole a little bit later. Mark English, he's got grey hair, Shano, just like us now.
Yeah, I'm sure he's been around,
God, it's insane. It seems like he's been, exactly. He's the Nick Willis of
He's the
men's 800 meter running.
LeBron James of 800 meter running.
We get this. Wins the 800, 1:43.85. First ever Diamond League career win for Mark Inglis. So shout out to Justin Rinaldi.
Could have been you, Jason, a veteran.
Could have been me, yeah. Probably not. Fan and friend of the podcast, JR, has been coaching Mark for the last couple of years. So another feather in the cap of Rinaldi there. But Shano, men's 3,000 meters. 14th place in this one. 7:29.98. Seth O'Donnell, Stu Kerr's favourite Australian athlete. 7:29.49. He becomes only the third Australian ever to break 7:30 for 3,000 meters.
Not high on basic speed, long loping action. Kind of got the surfer vibe. A very genial nature. He's the Aussie Kerr. That's what Kerr could have been if he hadn't. He's got a mullet too. And you remember that picture of Kerr that Sally had, where he's sitting down on the edge of a bed somewhere, and he's got the short up top and the mullet out the back. Sally keep pictures of Kerr.
Yeah. But for whatever reason. But either way, 7:29.49. So he's now faster than Craig Mottram, Shano, only the third Australian ever after Myers and Stewie McSwain to break 7:30 for 3,000 meters. Pretty solid meet all round. Sub 10 in the men's 100. Lachlan Kennedy, he gets fifth. He runs 10:01. Lachlan Kennedy, of course, takes a lot of heat from internet pundit the Aaron Brown. He's one of our favourites, despite some of the incredibly hot takes. But he was only 0.3 of a second. Well, no, not 0.3, 3/100ths of a second behind Kenny Bednarek in this one here, and he destroyed Christian Coleman. And it was also just a fraction behind Travion Bromell. So good performance from another Antipodean athlete in Lachlan Kennedy. Pretty solid meet, Shano.
Nice.
And speaking of the Diamond League, obviously this was the first one of the season. Shano, just in general, what are you looking forward to seeing this year in the Diamond League? It's it's an interesting season. It's a bit of a put up or shut up season in terms of running times. I mean, this has been mentioned sort of, I'd say, quite frequently recently, obviously with no world championships or major championships this year. We've only got the Commonwealth Games later in the year, again for English, New Zealand, Australia, the Caribbean athletes, some of the West African and East African nations as well. But no major championships this year. So the Diamond League is kind of taking on, or it's been in an interesting situation compared to recent years, which have obviously all had major championships in it. Is there anything in particular you're really looking forward to seeing in the Diamond League this year? Any stories or narratives you think are at play, Dar?
Well, as you know, Jason, I'm a purist, and I enjoyed that sort of, is it Schadenfreude of the off year and on year for many years as a young buck, and it was been kind of spoilt, but then almost saturated in the last few years with championships every year. So I'm not looking forward to the Diamond League, but also us pundits. You know, it's a tough job. You have to be on all the time. It's a bit like the NBA every week, trudging up to the lateral lawyers' offices to do the potty. I'm looking forward to taking a back seat and just sort of seeing the movements. But there's nothing that terribly excites me about watching people time trial for the year. It's much more exciting when it's building up to a championship. To me, those races are, if someone's going for an actual world record and they have a legit shot at it, then that's exciting. But yeah, this year, it's just, I think we're just going to muddle through, Jason.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one as well, because we'll talk about this guy later, Jakob. Doesn't seem like he's now going to be in the Diamond League this season, more focusing return in 2027. So that's definitely another big name it's been extremely positive and exciting for the sport who's not going to be there. I think I just made a few notes, Shano. I think I do think we're on kind of maybe not necessarily a world record watch this season, but definitely I feel like the window is closing for a number of key protagonists potentially in world record conversation this season. Men's 800 meters. I mean, we've been talking about this now for the last 2.5 seasons. Wanyonyi, Marco Arop, obviously very, very close in Paris. It seemed like the record was going to go down last year, and it didn't because it's just not quite that simple. Now we throw into the mix that Josh Hoey ran 1:42.50 indoors, broke the world record of the great Wilson Kipketer. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what these 800-meter guys do this year. And again, 1:43.85 in that opening Diamond League of the season is kind of like an ominous performance for where the men's 800 could go. I guess I'm interested to see if the guys can finally do that, because I think if they can't in this season, you may see that kind of peak window for the likes of Wanyonyi and Arop. And I think if Josh Hoey is ever going to run a fantastic time, I'm not sure if he can get the outdoor world record, but if he can run a fantastic time, it's probably going to be this year. The mile world record with Josh Kerr, I mean, this one kind of came out of thin air or out of nowhere, at least for me. Extremely interested to see if he can do that. And we've spoken about her a lot on the podcast, but Keely Hodgkinson, really interested to see if Keely can become only the third woman to ever run under 1:54, and how close may she potentially get to that legendary mark that we had as one of our great barriers left in the sport. But yeah. What about, this is another one I thought about, Shano. Femke Bol. I guess she's still running the 800, right? Haven't heard a lot about her since that indoor debut where she ran 1:59, but I'm also extremely interested to see what Femke Bol can do, provided that she's actually starting in some of these Diamond League women's 800s.
As Lee Hart would say, Jason, a lot of questions, not a lot of answers.
Exactly. Well, I guess that's going to make it somewhat exciting.
Yep.
All right. Well, here we go. I'm looking forward to Diamond League. You're not. All good.
I'm not looking forward to it. It's nice to have, you can't have, what do they say? It's impossible to know what it feels like to be in the light without being in the dark. I wouldn't mind just a sort of backseat season, just to, because energy and your enthusiasm for these things, Jason, sort of varies over the seasons, and I wouldn't mind just a little, because it's been pretty exciting. The last few years as a track fan, it's been all kind of dopamine fueled, record chasing, title chasing, all these great young athletes coming through. I'm looking forward to seeing some of, not so much the stars of yesteryear, or the ones who are maybe their star is fading a little bit, but looking forward to this amazing depth. I think we were chatting about the other day privately about this amazing depth that's coming into the sport. You said 14th, 729, Seth O'Donnell. Like, can some of these people, your Sam Ruths and I know Laros is kind of established, but he's still up and coming. All these sort of people, Simeon Birnbaums, what are these guys doing this year, and how are they developing towards the 2028 Olympics in LA? I mean, what's that's a storyline in and of itself. And are we going to see an historic level in the middle distances for LA at 28? Who's going to get there? Who's not going to get there? That to me is exciting. And more of a focal point for me than just your headline grabbing Diamond League world record attempt, or a really fast time in the 800. To me, it's like, how much are these guys coming up? Who's doing what?
I got another one for you. I just thought of, and this was a mailbag question many months ago. Is Cole Hocker actually going to win a Diamond League 1500 meter race? I think that's a really interesting one for me too, because he looks so good indoors. In that mile, he was obviously second in Wanamaker, just behind Josh Kerr. But again, the reality is this guy, with all his talent, being the Olympic champion over the 1500 meters, you and I think we both agree, this guy has got the talent to win right now he's in this purple patch in his career where he has got the physical ability to win every single race that he enters, a la some of the greats, a la your El Garouge, a la your Morselli. He can be dominant right now. The reality is he has never won a Diamond League 1500 meter race, and it's going to be extremely interesting to see if he can do that this year.
You know what's great about that, though, is your Walkers and your Ovets and your Coes and all that. That era, as opposed to the 1990s EPO, drug era, these guys there isn't one dominant athlete, and they've all got different strengths. Hocker's got a big kick, and he can foot it in a 3:27 race. So that's why he's the Olympic champion. He's not doped up. There are other guys around his level, and because they've all got slightly different expressions of the best facet, so to speak, of their talent, you're seeing a lot of great battles and a lot of different and great champions. So to me, it's way more exciting than just get the big, the sort of trio of African pacers and everyone lines up and sees how long they can hang on, and one or maybe two guys, usually one, wins everything. It's a far more exciting era. So I think I couldn't be less bothered if he never won a Diamond League. In fact, it sort of adds to his mystique.
Yeah,
it's got a sort of Viren-esque sort of vibe to it if he is never managing to win a Diamond League.
It's a good name. Last day Viren. Shano, some other action coming up, non-Diamond League related, but a couple of interesting sort of off-distance appearances going to come from two of the world's great two-lap exponents. Obviously, 2 laps being the 800 meters. Cooper Luchtenhaus and our girl Kelly Hodgkinson. Look, he's going to run the 1500 meters next weekend in LA, Shano. What do you reckon that guy's going to run? Should we have a little bit of a predictions contest here, and we'll revisit next week and see how we do? Or maybe the week after, actually, because I think that race
what's an average, like a pretty respectable time now in the 1500? 3:30?
Yeah.
Feels like it. 14th place, 7:29.
I know. It's crazy. Even a couple of years ago, or 5 or 6 years ago, if Cooper Luchtenhaus had been in this situation, I would have said, for a kid who's got amazing 400-meter chops, it doesn't look like he's doing super high volume work on the track, et cetera, I would have been like, man, if he ran under 3:45, that would be an awesome performance. And right now it seems, some of the predictions out there, some of the pundits, the hot takes on the internet have got him down even as low as 3:35 for 1500. What do you actually think he's going to run?
Remind me how fast he's run for 400.
So I think he's a 46 low guy out of the blocks. Pretty sure. I can actually double.
I think he can run 3:35. Yeah.
Oh God.
3:34, 3:36. I don't know. Something. I was thinking mid 3:30s. Yeah.
Wow.
He's not that fast of a 400. Then he's sort of if Co ran 46.0 electronic from blocks, and Co was a 3:20. I know he may not have been a 3:29 runner when he did that, but he was sort of a 3:32 runner. Yeah, but the training's better in terms of they're using more of that speed strength,
right?
Or thresholdy stuff. Maybe not if he just won one off. He might run 3:39 or 3:40 or 3:38. I definitely don't think he's a 3:45 athlete.
No, he's run 46.30 for 400 out of the block. So actually, I thought he was maybe even down below.
What do you run, Jason? You ran 3:42 and you ran what, 47.6 electronic?
47.7.
Second and a half quicker than you. He's 4 seconds quicker over the 800.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can't be slower than 3:40 odd.
No, I don't shape.
Maybe it's a bad day. Some of these guys, they sort of gimp around and run, bad, or they go out in 157 and they blow up and run 3:43 or something. But I think he's like a 3:36 runner, 3:35 runner.
I think so too. And you know what performance I've got in my mind is kind of a yardstick is Donovan Brazier. Remember when Brazier ran?
Yeah.
This was the weird COVID year, and they were running all these just, what do they call them? They were some kind of name they had for the meets. But he ran it at like Jesuit High School out in Portland or somewhere out in the Wops, and he ran that 3:35 race, and he came home in like 40 point or something like that. So it wasn't extremely quick early on. I just get the feeling if Donovan Brazier, who was also notoriously low mileage or very, very low mileage at that time, very much a 400-meter speed-based 800 guy, if he could run that kind of performance, I know he was a little bit older than Cooper Luchtenhaus. And the other thing is too, Shano, I'm kind of talking myself out of this, but when he did run that 1500 performance, that was, I think, his second year with Pete Julian at Oregon Project. And remember, they took him from extremely low mileage and threw a lot of mileage at him, which brought him up to that level where he ran 142 very, very quickly. But it was also the reason that he just imploded and basically broke his foot. So maybe that 1500 was a result of just that kind of bump in mileage. But I'm sort of with you. I could see a time around sort of 3:36, 3:37. Brandon Miller ran 3:38 I think, last year as an 800 guy, the guy from Brooks Beasts. And I think House has probably got just a little bit more talent. So, yeah, I think we're probably about in the same ballpark. Why don't we do an under over? We'll do an under over. What do you? You're a little bit more typically bullish. What do you think? Would you be 336.50? Would you take the under on that?
I just don't know. I think he could be in that shape, but like I said, if he's so good at the 800, and so if he could easily go 157 because he's just this is easy, and then that 1200, 1300 mark, he could run bloody 47 for his last 300 and run 339, 340. So I probably wouldn't. I'd like to preserve my record against you, Jason, in these bets. Yeah, it's not. You're
a great sports gambler. You've been doing well recently. I thought you'd be.
Got to be very convinced.
Okay. All right. Well, the other one is Keely Hodgkinson over 400. She's going to open her season up over the one lap. She ran 51.49 indoors in Glasgow, I think, at the UK Indoor Champ. Shano, what do you think she can run for a 400? More importantly, what do you think she has to run for 400 in order to kind of achieve what her goals are this season over 800, which is 100%, we know this, to run a performance that starts with the digits 1, 5, and 3. What do you think she's going to do for that 400? Do you think she can break 51?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah?
But here's the thing. I think when an 800-meter runner like her goes and runs the 400 in the top field, it's usually there are historical examples of this. And I can't think of specifics off the top of my head, but it is usually very, very good, or it is a disaster. And I believe it's going to be one of those two things. And I'm leaning towards it could be a bit of a disaster because I think they go out, they're not sprinters, they're not 400, she's not a 400, 800 type. I think she goes out because of, she's human. She goes, even she's told to hold back. She goes out, I think I can't get too far behind, but not too far behind in a race like that could still be way ahead of her pace for a 400. And I think there's a high chance she almost runs a 200-meter personal best through 200 and explodes and runs like 52.8, and all the naysayers are going to go, she's never going to rank 154. But I don't think it works like that. I think the way it works is she could run really badly and still run 153.9 this year. I just think that's how the 800 works. Or she might run 50.4 because they may. One thing I was thinking is they're pretty damn clued up, that group she's involved with. So to line her up in something like that, I think they must have seen some stuff in training which makes them think she could at least not absolutely blow up and embarrass herself, and it's a worthwhile project to go and do. I just don't think they'd line her up if they thought she's going to run 52 seconds. But I've been wrong many times before, but that's my feeling.
No, I don't think she'll.
If I had to bet on it, I think she could blow up a bit.
I'm not. I don't think she'll run 52 seconds, but I also don't think she's going to run under 51. I definitely see what you're saying, because one of her weaknesses, obviously, in the 800 meters, and just with all the women's 800 meter runners, we know that when they pass that anaerobic threshold, like early on in races, they don't have a large amount of
strength. That's why historically some drugs has worked. Some of these regimes, drugs has worked a lot better on the women than the men.
Yes,
because strength, in relative terms, is the biggest weakness of women compared to men, like physical strength. So it's just, it naturally follows. The same way cycling has always led itself to drugs. It's a strength problem, as Michele Ferrari explained in an article I read talking about doping. And everyone goes on about blood boosting. Strength is the biggest problem in cycling. And it's the same in track and field with men v women. So I totally agree. That's why I think though, if she is like half second too quick, I mean, if Sydney McLaughlin, Levroni can go out too quick and blow up and run 49 point something, and then a few races later run, she only runs a few races, 47.7 or 47.8, whatever she ran, then Kelly Hodgkinson sure as hell can blow up and have a bigger fall off than Sydney McLaughlin, and she's only going to do one at that level. So I'm for once, I'm not bullish about her actual time she puts up. Do I think she can run 50.8? I do, but she's not a 400-meter runner, and she's not going to do 6 to 8 400-meter races. So I think the likelihood of popping one great performance with all the attention on you against other 400-meter runners is not good.
I think that's honestly the best point. And that sums it up in a nutshell. Because I can tell you from experience as a more of a pure 800 runner myself, I could run an okay 400, but it was very much on a fine line. Like the difference between me getting it right and getting it wrong was very, very difficult to find because I just didn't have experience in running the races. Yes. So it was every, you're probably doing one or two in a season at most, exactly what Keely's doing right now. And you do have to have practice and experience at going out and feeling what it's like and getting that intuitive sense of what that threshold point is and where you're comfortable crossing it in a race. So that's why I 100% agree. It could go very, very wrong for her here. I do think, though, to your point about Trevor Painter and that group, I think they're very, very switched on. I don't think they're going to. I think they'll clue her up quite well. She seems to be quite cerebral in her approach to racing, which I think is good. But again, there's also that human element of, you're just on the start line. It's going to be a Diamond League meet. You're excited. It's you're running in Rome in the Olympic Stadium. Like all these things that are just part of the human element that can just kind of tip you over the edge. But yeah, I've got a low 51 performance in my mind. I think she'll be able to replicate what she did indoors. And I think probably like that conversion between indoors to outdoors, especially for the women, lighter body weights, not quite running as fast, centripetal force is not destroying them on the corners like some of the faster guys on the men's side. I think she can probably run an equivalent performance in the low 51s.
For you, and because I personally don't understand why, but I'm just a dude doing a podcast for fun about athletics, but why do you think they're doing it? I can't. When I think about it, I don't really understand that.
That is a good question because actually I think that if she was really serious about potentially going after the world record, let's just use that as an example, the 1500 meters is a better indicator. And we've talked about Justin.
No, you don't need to do a Diamond League and run 4:03 or be out there. I don't see what it does for you.
Yeah, but in order for her to run kind of close to that world record mark and using Justin's formula, we figured out that she needed to be down around like kind of that 357, 358 range of 1500. I think that's probably a lot easier for her to run in a Diamond League meet, with the impetus of a big field, similar. Honestly, I feel like a race like that one last night in Shanghai would be perfect for her, where there were so many athletes kind of between 356 and 358.
I don't reckon she could run 357.
No, I don't think so either. But I think the question is if she was going to run off distance. Yeah. Like what's more important for her? Like, because you asked the question, why is she doing a 400? I'm guessing because they just want to kind of not have her exclusively running eights and try and work on something else.
Run the Bristol British Milers Club 400 or something, or run a bunch of guys in training. I don't get it. But anyway,
yeah, that's a good point.
And there's great precedent for world record holders or people who are threatening the world record level to be pure 800 meter runners. You got Kip Cater, Radisha. I mean, they're not bad names to emulate. No. They were pure 800 meter runners, both a bit different physiologically, but and running form, but they were just your pure, where their level at 800, what record holder was constantly better than anything they could produce over 400 or 1500. That was their distance. And 800 is a unique, how do I put it, composition of abilities from Peter Martin, Coe's advisor, saying from 200 up to 5K. And you have to be very competent from 200 meters up to 5K without having to be particularly flash at any of those distances other than the 800. Yeah. And she's just a perfect pure 800 meter runner. She's got that sort of semi-sprint cruising speed, down pat at like 55, 56. She's strong. She's not like a sort of weedy 1500 meter type. Doesn't have a pure sprint action, the 400 like the quite different up on the toes action. That's why she can last 2 laps.
I think Moo,
yeah. But she's your pure 800 type. I just don't. Yeah. Anyway, like I said, what do I know about? I'm more intrigued as to why they're doing it. Interesting.
Yeah, totally. The only other comparison I can think of was Radisha. Remember, Radisha went down to Melbourne. Might have even been in that Olympic year. He ran 45.
Yeah.
Was it 45.8 or was it even faster? Might have been like 45.0 something.
Something like that.
Down in that Melbourne Grand Prix or in Sydney, I think. But then again, that was also his total off season, which was the equivalent of her running that 400 meters indoors. So yeah, either way, interesting. So a couple of 800 meter specialists and studs, just going a little bit off track. One in one direction, which to be honest, I think I like more. I like the fact that Cooper Lichtenhouse is going up to the 1500 meters. I think that's going to benefit him a lot more. Kelly going down to the 400. I'm with you, Shane. I'm not quite sure about that one, but either way, I'm going to go, sum it up. I think 337 flat for Lukti and 51.15 for Kelly. There we go. Those are my predictions. Shano, is it time for our new favorite segment? The people keep asking for it. We came in last episode with the theme music. We'll do it again. Shano, I think it's finally time for Athlete's Court. What do you reckon today? So you were throwing out a potential different re-up on the format. Is that right? You had some ideas?
Coming in really cold. When someone just springs a name on you. I think it might not have the usual grace of delivery that we're so renowned for, but it's kind of comical to see someone going, "Oh, how do I justify this?"
Okay. Well, so then should we go back to kind of the older format? Do you want me to spring a couple of names at you? Because I'm coming a little bit warmer than you are this week. And you can do you want to choose who I'm going to play the
why don't we scrap that idea we talked about off air beforehand about the men's 5, because why don't you just have a format where you pick an event and you throw a couple of names at me, and then I'll pick the person who puts the names up, so the other person gets to pick the name, and then they go first.
Okay.
Oh no, they go second.
Yeah, they go second. All right. Well, so I'll just come up with the names.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to stick with the men's 5 because I like it. Whatever. We're going to do this week, Shane, on Athlete's Court. Lasse Viren, the Flying Finn, up against Sir Mo Farah. Take your pick, Shano.
We've already talked about it though. It'll be more fun if we just are cold. You don't have any. Yeah. And that's boring because it's just they're basically the same athlete, Jason.
No, but that's the point. That's what we've got to try and
they both won a whole lot of titles. They couldn't run, the world record level.
Yes, they could. Lasse Viren was a 2-time world record holder.
27:30.
Yeah,
well, you struggle to win the local park run in 27:30 these days, Jason.
All right. Okay. Well, so are you going to give me 2 names?
No, you're going to give me 2 names.
Well, like just completely random names out of nowhere.
Yeah, random names, and then if you can't make,
do they have to be the same event?
I don't think so, but they could be. Oh. Same event would be better.
Yeah. Okay. Geez, I've got no idea. You've just blown up the spot. Thought we were going to do Lasse Viren, Mo Farah. I thought that was really good. Fans probably want to hear it.
But you put them up before we went on air, so you're coming in like you said a bit.
Well, no, but I was still going to give you the choice. Okay, either way. So we're scrapping the men's 5K. We're not doing the men's 5K. We've got to come up on the spot. All right. How about this one then? Men's. Oh gosh, I was going to say that's a little bit unfair though.
Unfair's fine. I don't mind losing. It'll just be a good theatre.
No, because one of them was like a real. Here's a good one. What's this guy's name? Okay, men's steeplechase. Shane, Moses Kiptanui or Ezekiel Kemboy.
Oh. Okay. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, you're going to go first then.
I'm going to go first. Well, who am I getting?
You can have Kemboy.
Well, Kemboy. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't really. I kind of stitched myself up here because I don't really know that much. But here about Kimboy,
I know a bit about that.
This is what I think Ezekiel Kimboy did. I know Ezekiel Kimboy was a 2-time Olympic champion, and I believe he was he a 3-time world champion or a 4-time world champion?
Possibly
3 or 4 times. Okay. I also think he's got also like two or three silver medals at the steeplechase at the World Championships. So if that is in fact the case, he went to 7 World Championships and walked away with potentially 4 golds, 3 silvers. Let's say that's best case. Someone can fact check me on that one. 2 Olympic champions, Shano. I think he is the best. Based on that, he has to be the best steeplechase racer of all time. It's very, very difficult to argue with that. Now, he wasn't the world record holder, but I believe he was still a he absolutely surely was a sub-8 performer, right? Or was he not? But either way, I'm gonna say Ezekiel Kimboy is better over the steeplechase than Moses Kiptanui, even though I may necessarily not want to say that. But I'm making the case from here on Athletes Court. 2 Olympic titles, 4 world championships, 3 world silvers. Surely the most dominant over the course of a long period of time, because it had to at least span a decade. Steeplechaser of all time, Shano. The floor is yours on the great Moses Kiptanui.
Ezekiel Kimboy is the Tim Duncan of track and field. He got the job done. He won over and over again. He had, unlike Tim Duncan, he was somewhat flamboyant with his. This is the guy, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, that did the little dances with Bolt and all that stuff.
Yeah. But he ran out to lane 8 or something like that to win a.
He's a forgettable character, though, and the fact you and I both had to scratch our chin, we didn't even know how many titles he'd won, and he really morphed into the leader of a amorphous Kenyan tribe who seemed to win every steeplechase championship for the last 50 years. Maybe I'm exaggerating, 25, 30 years. And yeah, there's nothing to me in personality or star power that stands out about Ezekiel Kimboy. However, Moses Kiptanui, who adorned many a track and field news cover back in the 1990s, was the Kenyan superstar of his era. He mentored characters like Daniel Coman, who was his training partner, and second to Moses Kiptanui when he broke the world 5,000 meter record in, I believe, 95 or 96 with a
95,
12:56.96. Coman was second in around 12:58, allegedly 18 or 19 years old at the time, although I doubt. No, sorry, Coman was the 12:56. Kiptanui, I believe, was 12:55 to break that record.
Kip was 55, yeah.
Kiptanui, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe had the 3,000 meter world record as well. And
first man ever under 7:30.
And a high 7:28. So was he the first man as well to break 8 minutes for the steeplechase? Or was that?
Yes, he was, of course, yeah.
He was, yeah. And
that's the famous story.
The first man to break the 8-minute barrier. Breaking a barrier, as we know, the flat events is a massively symbolic feat. He was a star. He didn't win the Olympics, did he? He was second in the Olympics.
No.
So I can't argue with you that he is a better steeplechaser than Ezekiel Kimboy. Ezekiel Kimboy, based on my argument last week, which I cannot conveniently forget when we talked about Maria Motola, is you have to judge someone on how often they win the biggest events. And to win that many titles, 4 world championships, 2 Olympics, Kimboy is the better steeplechaser. However, Moses Kiptanui is the biggest star. He leaves a bigger legacy. And for that reason, he will live on in the hearts and minds of goofy track and field nerds like us until we take our last breath.
Yeah, is this now where I get the rebuttal?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not really going to rebut you, Shano, because it was just a great ad lib like conversation. I was interested in some of the stats or the facts here, since we've already put them out on the table. So I've got Kimboy's numbers here, and I will say this, I think that Kimboy this is an interesting one. He was the better steeplechaser. Moses Kiptanui is the greater runner.
Yeah.
And the better runner. Just in general. I mean, like when you were the 3,000 meter flat world record holder, the chase world record holder, and the 5,000 meter world record holder, your name is forever etched into the annals alongside some of the absolute greats in the sport. You're alongside Gebb, you're alongside Bekele, you're alongside Daniel Coleman, you're alongside Ingebrigtsen. You are a Seder-weter. You're just with the greats. But listen to this record from Ezekiel Kemboi. So he was the Olympic champion first in 2004 and then in 2012. So like to win Olympics that far apart is incredibly special. But listen to this world championship record. Between 2003 and 2015, he didn't miss a world championships. He was at every freaking world championships from 2003 through to 2015.
He didn't do a lot else in that time, did he?
Oh, God. For his first three, 03, 05, and 07, he got the silver medal and then went on the run. He went on the LG run and he did win 4 straight in a row.
Oh, so he won 3 silvers and then 4 golds.
Yeah. All in a row without missing a single world championships. That is incredible longevity. I mean, he was also dominant in the Diamond League. Yeah, Golden League as well. He was also Commonwealth Games champion in 2006. So this guy won a lot of gold and a lot of hardware over the steeplechase. But I don't disagree with you, Shano, because Moses Kiptanui is just such a legendary name in the annals of track and field. Like for any old nut, every old nut knows Moses Kiptanui. They've got the images of Kiptanui running in that mid to late 90s period. Not so much Ezekiel Kemboi, who was a bit more pigeonholed in that 3,000 meters. So that's kind of where I'm going to land. If you're in agreement, Ezekiel, the better steeplechaser, but purely because he was just a steeplechase specialist. I think Kiptanui just the greater all-round runner.
It is an extraordinary move, but I'm going to do what has happened a handful of times in history and recuse myself from defending my athlete, Moses Kiptanui, after hearing that. 7 straight world championships, 3 silver, 4 golds.
Oh, God.
You can't argue with that conscience, Jason.
No, that's incredible. Not even I knew he'd won a lot.
It's just incredible to even go. We talk about, say, Nick Willis being was it 5 or 6 time Olympian and Mule Notti, but to even go, or Motola, to even go to that many championships, but to come first or second in every one. He's like the Lance Armstrong of the men's steeplechase.
Oh, I know. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's hope he's not actually like the Lance Armstrong.
That's what I was going to say. How literal are you being here? All right. Hey, that was a good athletes court, Shano. Putting athletes on trial. They don't even know it, and just
tough when you don't have any prep.
Running them over the coals. A couple of bozos on the Track Stitch podcast. Shano, a few other things to wrap up the podcast. It's been a good one. Some Jakob news. We mentioned him earlier. He's now targeting 2027 to be competitive, but this one here. This little tidbit came through from our good buddy Kerr. Speaking of the marathon, after he'd entered the lottery to run the London Marathon, and also your comment, Shana, that there may potentially be a reunion between Stu Kerr and our good friend and fan of the podcast, superfan Robbie Kramer Johnson, caused a bit of a stir in amongst athletic circles. Like people wondering if potentially Kerr with super shoes, potentially a sub 100 gram pair of shoes. He's always been a great talent. Could he potentially be a sub 230, maybe even a sub 220 marathon runner under the watchful gaze of Kramer?
I mean, for those who don't know Kerr and think of him as a bit of a court jester, a renowned court jester even, wouldn't know that he spends a lot of time staring at painted lines on a swimming pool for hour after hour. So the guy has a big engine. He has largely, I believe, relinquished the stranglehold. I was going to say his stranglehold, or the stranglehold that the Dope Pistons Surf Tour had on him. Are we going to see the almost like sort of Eddie Hillybuck? Oh, wait a minute, did he get caught for EPO?
He did.
Yeah. So clean Eddie Hillybuck.
Possibly. I don't know how.
Bicarb work in marathon?
I don't know, but if it does, I'm sure he'll try it. Just don't take spoonfuls of mum's baking soda like I did back in the late 90s and have to run straight from the start finish line to the toilet to Yeah, anyway. Somehow we went from talking about Jakob Ingebrigtsen to Stu Kerr, but either way, the news that Kerr gave us.
Champions of yesteryear.
Yeah, exactly. Jakob's quote about the marathon, he's going all in, like eventually when he gets there, going for sub 159. Shano, any chance that Jakob Ingebrigtsen runs under 159 for the marathon?
Polymarket isn't big on track and field. I've looked because I like athletics punting, so I feel like it's an inefficient market. But here's one that would be a good polymarket. Who's got more chance of realizing or rediscovering their sort of potential? Jakob Ingebrigtsen or Stu Kerr?
Well, I still think it's Jakob, but here's a better here's a better question for you. Who's got more chance of actually finishing a marathon within the next 3 years, Stu Kerr or Jakob Ingebrigtsen?
Oh, Stu Kerr.
Yeah, exactly.
Jakob's going to go out on like 55 pace for the first half.
Well, that's if his super shoe damaged Achilles tendons can even make it that far.
I'm going to find part of his tendons on Fifth Avenue. That's what's going to happen. Jakob, that is, not Kerr.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, he's now targeting 2027 to be competitive. Shano, that is a long time between drinks in men's track and field, especially at this level. We talked about this before. Brazier did it. He had nearly 3.5 years off, but the big difference, obviously, with Donovan Brazier, running the 800 meters, number 2, was never maniacally training to be a professional track and field athlete since about the age of 13. So largely undertrained, doesn't have as many miles under his belt. Man, 2 years off from the top for Jakob. If he doesn't run this season, that just seems like a one of
two things are going on in terms of what I understand. So one is that he is even worse by a long stretch than he was when he entered the World Champs. And by his lofty standards, he was very poor and untrained.
Right.
In those World Championships. So that's possibility one. The second possibility, which I would be a much brighter, better prospect for him, would be if someone really sensible that he respects had come into his camp and said, hey, this is not, the way, trying to rush back, it's an off year anyway. Let's just get back into shape. Last year was fine because, you maybe that you had clause in your Nike contract, or for your own reasons, you just decided that's the sort of person you are. That's great. But it wasn't great for your self-esteem. It didn't really achieve a lot other than get you in the headlines for a few weeks. And it is, if he cares about such a thing, damaging to your legacy. So maybe someone, or maybe it was him, said, you know what, stuff this, I'm going to go away. And I didn't like the fact that those guys all smashed me. I didn't like being knocked out in the heats when I'm an Olympic champion. So let's hope it's either someone external's come in and done that, or he's done it. From what you guys tell me, I don't really follow social media, that, training in the, the low protection shoes, and just, it seems like he's got a somewhat spasmodic, like it sort of almost childlike exuberance for his training, and just smashes. So maybe that's not happening. I don't know. I don't really follow that part of his development, but it's one of those two things. If you ask me, he's either really, really out of shape. He's like, it's just going to be like last year or worse, or he's going, you know what? I just need the year off racing to just really get back to old Jakob. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to be negative about these things because in life, more often than not, like, it's very difficult to do what he did at that level. That's why we talk about him all the time, because he's a guy, right? He's the superstar of, at least on the men's side of track and field. So it's very easy to be like, oh, he's not going to get back to that level. But it's so difficult. And if all the planets don't align, which they did for so long for him to be at that level, which made him Jakob Ingebrigtsen, it's very difficult. Even if one of those factors is slightly askance, how is he going to get back to that level? But I think it's a good thing, mate. I think why come back if you're like 13 or 12:55 shape, 3:32? Like, what's the point? Like, he's obviously had some major problems. So I think it's good news. It's good development.
Okay. All right, Shane, let's get out of here on this one. One mailbag came in from our good buddy. Not, and this doesn't have to be track and field related. We're a Track Stitch podcast, but we're got pundit from Schteve. We touch on all sports. We're fans of all sports. We've got knowledge of all sports. Don't you worry about that. Mailbag question from Schteve. Guys, what were your top 3 most traumatic, devastating childhood sporting losses? This is a good one.
Moments.
Just moments, like just most devastating. Yeah, exactly. Most devastating moments, which mostly were losses. Shano, have you got any absolute top of mind for you?
The only one that I still vividly remember is the Black Caps Pakistan 1992 semi-final at Eden Park. You know, and you have to appreciate that as a 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 year, when you first start getting into cricket because your dad watched it, that the Black Caps or the Young Guns, Martin Crowe's Debbie Draft Young Guns with the bandana and that horrible grey, were just the laughing stock of world cricket. They were useless. They used to get smashed by like an innings and 200 runs in Australia. And if they ever won a game, it was like winning the lottery. Your team, someone got like a 50 and you'd look at the guy and go, he's a Greek god. So they were terrible. And then they went into the 92 World Cup and of course they were incredible. Martin Crowe was very innovative. He brought old dippers, slippers, Patel on, bowl spin, and Crowe was just like, he was a superb player. If you ask any like top cricketer from that era, or in fact any era who are, you know, the great batsmen of all time, they'll tell you Martin Crowe on his day was as good as anyone that's ever played the game. He was just a superb technician, mentally tough. Wasim said he, you know, played him better than anyone in that era. And to do all that, and then to come, they won 8 out of 9 games, and then to lose to Pakistan in the manner they did. And I've got that image of Inzamam al-Haq and Javed with the Street Fighter with the little bat he held quite low on the handle and the moustache and with the open grill and the white helmet, just noodling the ball around. And I remember I was at my friend John O'Fisher's place on Windmill Avenue, and I remember my friend Joe Cunningham running off and crying and locking himself in the bathroom when it happened. And I remember we were all just sitting there like someone had died. That was the sort of PTSD moment. Of course, as I got older, there were the Warriors moments, but I never cared. I was older by then and still immature, but not quite as immature as I was when I was 12. And yeah, the Warriors, the whole Warriors to me is PTSD. That's why I just, you know, I can't support them. But that one moment was that 92. What about you, Jase? I know you shared that moment.
I did. Yeah. I have the same images in my head of bloody Inzamam al-Haq. He comes out, he's got no hat on. He's just got the barnet flowing,
just the barnet flowing.
in the zephyr coming across the Hauraki Gulf into Kingsland and Eden Park. And he's just coming out and he's swiping those balls off stump over to that short boundary down at square leg at the old Eden Park. And it just went from this, because I think Pakistan were in a bit of trouble there. They were like 4 down for 80 or 90 or something. They weren't in good shape. And he just turned the match around. And then similar to your mate who ran off and locked himself in the bathroom, I remember when Javed hit the winning runs, I sprinted outside. I have mentioned this story before. I just collapsed in the middle of the backyard crying, inconsolable. That was so devastating. That's by far the most devastating one. But I've got another one for you, Shane, that was also pretty devastating for me. I don't know if you watched this game, but the 1995 Rugby World Cup final between New Zealand and South Africa. Of course, it was at Ellis Park, Johannesburg. This was probably, that 92 cricket team, right? Like you said, they were so terrible going into it, and they, for all intents and purposes, they couldn't maintain any momentum afterwards, and they sucked afterwards. But the All Blacks of that time period were just so good, right? And this was really the team that revolutionized rugby. Lomu, it was kind of the era of running rugby. They were so expensive. They were just so good from the forward pack. They had a big, fast, mobile forward pack. Zinzan was playing number 8, could drop goals from halfway. Lomu, the back line. Mertens was a fantastic kicker. And I just remember waking up at, I think it was maybe a 2 a.m. kickoff, like those classic middle of the night kickoffs. And then the dejection as this game is going on and on and on, and they just cannot do anything. And as it turns out, they'd been horrifically food poisoned by Susie the waitress, which, by the way, I 100% believe happened. When you actually look at the way these players were compared to how they'd been in the previous games, that was a
100%.
devastating loss for me too. To lose in overtime to like a freaking drop goal from Joel bloody Stransky. I did not go back to bed that morning, but I was a little bit older by this point in time. I was 3 years older, but I'm pretty sure I cried for that one too.
I remember going to my mate Ben Gardner's house and we watched it with his dad, but I was always pretty apathetic about rugby, whereas I love cricket. So cricket to me, that cut deep, whereas rugby was a bit like, oh, okay, we lost. But I agree. They were it was like a different team was on the paddock. I remember I watched all the games. They were so dominant. And I know people say, oh, no, but that's the difference between finals rugby. But yeah, even then, like, it wasn't that. It was totally like, they were like ghosts. And they didn't. No, I totally agree.
Some other honourable mentions, because I know that those were definitely the top two from my mind. Jane, what about the 2009 Berlin 1500 metre final? We weren't kids, but that was a pretty traumatic.
We were kids, mate, because we were punting on a freaking Kenyan to win the World Championships.
As
Kenyan who both previously and since is shown the tactical guile of a tortoise or a snowflake. It was just absurd.
I think that was a kind of a devastating sporting loss there. Not really sporting, but because we didn't have any money at all at the time and we lost.
We didn't after that.
Didn't after that. But last one from me, Shane. This PTSD will live in my mind forever as well. You mentioned league earlier. This is not the Warriors, but any Kiwis test versus Australia from about 1988 through to the turn of the century. You just remember like tuning in with the best intentions, like, oh, this could be finally the time when Tony Panapa and the Kiwis will finally beat the Kangaroos. Jared McCracken.
What it was like, Jason.
It was like
when you're 12 and you're playing rugby down at the local reserve, and then one of your mates has an older brother and his mates turn up at 17 and they insist on playing the 12-year-olds in a league match, and you just know you're going to lose 100-0. That's what it felt like, eh? They'd always score within the first minute, always be 4-0.
I know. You always had these great, it was so exciting, like a league test versus Australia. Can we fight? This is finally going to be the year when we beat the Kangaroos. And then it's like 10 minutes into the game, you're just smashed. And I will always have
Steve
PTSD. Oh my God. Yeah, I know. So good. The Wally Lewis Kangaroos. And it was like Wally Lewis, Mel Meninga, all the greats, Ricky Stewart. They just beat up on the Kiwis. We were shit for that period all the way through until basically the year 2000. So Schteve, there you go. Those were some of the traumatic childhood sporting moments or losses from the Track Stitch podcast. Shano, anything else from your side?
I remember it wasn't me, but me and old mate Nick Willis. I was down in the Hutt Valley in the year 2000.
Yeah.
And we watched that 1500 final when Noah Nan beat LG. Nick actually was quite upset by it because he went and took his LG poster off the wall, and his dad, Richard, had a big sort of grin on his face. And to think he went on and won the medals in that event after watching it with him, really made me realize, not for me, I didn't have the talent for that, but how it was possible to do great things in life. It was pretty inspiring, actually. I remember watching the 08 in my flat at the time, living with old Shafraz Khan in the first year at the law firm in a freezing cold flat in Landscape Road, watching Nick, get that come through for that medal and going to work so excited that day. So that was pretty cool. I remember, but yeah, he was a bit upset because it was obviously he wanted to be the next great miler, and watching the great miler of his generation get out sprinted by a, let's be honest, relatively little known Kenyan in terms of
at the time. Yeah. No, that's a good one too. All right, Schteve, there you go. Mailbag in the box. Shano, I'll get you out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'm going to go out and enjoy the oxygen-less air of Denver, Colorado. Shane, good podcast. We'll do this again next week. Of course, for any of the fans out there, if you've got any mailbag questions, the trackstitch@gmail.com. I mean, we can't get through all the emails that we get from you guys, but we do our best.
Very good, mate.
All right, Shane, have a good rest of your weekend. Cheers.
Cheers.